welcome to the Building Centre. My name is Colin Tweedy and I'm Chief Executive of the Building Centre, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this first talk for the Building Centre and the Built Environment Trust in 2017, and we are delighted to see a full house, both full house here and upstairs, where there's a live relay to those of our guests who are unfortunate not to be able to sit down here. And we're thrilled that Bill McDonough, who I know has no need of introduction, but my colleague Lewis Blackwell, Executive Director of Strategy and Development, will chair the session with Bill. And we're delighted to have caught Bill on his way to Davos, from snowy climbs to certainly we're slightly preparing for a winter storm here, and I know Davos will be both lively, both in intellect and hot air, as well as, no, I didn't say that. But ladies and gentlemen, again, delighted that the Building Centre is able to host such an important start to what is going to be a very significant year, I think, globally, both for sustainability, architecture, and the whole of the built environment. The Built Environment Trust is the charity which owns the Building Centre, which was founded in 1931. In 14 years' time, we will be 100 years old. But we are an organisation established to bring the very best ideas of the built environment together, both in architecture, engineering, sustainability, design, planning, and product development. So we are thrilled to see you all here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague Lewis Blackwell, who will introduce Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. So yes, I will keep this very brief because I know who you're here for, not for me. A little bit of hygiene, first of all, in terms of event. If you need to escape because of the fire, out to the right, up the stairs, all very straightforward. As Colin mentioned, we are videoing this event, and now some people, we have to tell you that because maybe you don't want to be videoed. Maybe you're supposed to be somewhere else tonight, I don't know. But it is being videoed. It's live streamed upstairs. It's also out there on the web too. And we will be later putting it on the website, and indeed maybe Bill will be putting it somewhere in this archive. So we're going to have plenty of time for questions afterwards, I hope. And so do prepare your questions, be ready with them. Because it's being on the video, please wait for the microphone to reach you if you get a chance to ask a question, so that people can actually hear the question. That's a really important little bit of, otherwise the video falls apart at that point. Now to the main matter. So Time magazine called him a hero for the planet, and Vanity Fair headlined his work, Industrial Revolution Take 2. Bill Clinton wrote the foreword to one of his books. He's the only individual recipient I can read of the Presidential Award for Sustainable Development. He and his research and writing partner Michael Braungart have given us the very words, cradle to cradle, that now sit at the core of the circular economy thinking. He's even been described as the father of the circular economy. So Bill McDonough is one of the few architects I think who really deserve the title visionary, because it's kind of a fact that he set out a sense of where we need to go, and he's been working hard to make that happen, and indeed to try and prevent other scenarios coming about. And he's influenced many, many people in taking that direction. Indeed, he sits behind much of the focus, I think, of recent months here at the Built Environment Trust and through the Building Centre. The exhibition Circular Living that we had last year, the circular building structure that went up outside with the work with Arup, and indeed the issues that we're going to be raising in an exhibition that opens here next month, the Super Material exhibition that I've been curating with the team. And Bill has also incidentally written an article and is a major profile of our new journal that we launch next month, and we'll certainly send you some information on that. So enough of that bit of the future, because let's focus on right on now. And I'm sure many of us have seen Bill's talk on a TED Talk online, but that's a little bit in the past, I think. So I'm really looking forward to having an update on the thoughts and the actions. And over to Bill. Thank you.
Wow. I called Lewis and said, I'm dropping in. Here we are. And it's a real privilege to have you here. I hope what I am about to describe is useful. It's delivered humbly. This is very hard work, and we're all doing it together, and that's the key. I was here to meet with Unilever to talk about the future of packaging. I'm designing packaging. We're designing clothing. We're looking at systems across the spectrum of human design. And today I'll just show some thinking about the background of the thoughts and how Cradle to Cradle translates into action. And then I'll show you an article I wrote for Nature, for the journal Nature. And it was really kind of fun for me because I decided to take on carbon. And I didn't want to do it last year because we had Paris and such marvelous things. But I got very sad last March. I heard the Prime Minister of Bhutan announce that Bhutan was going to be the world's first carbon negative country. What made me sad was he was talking about the forest producing more oxygen, about 3 times than the carbon being produced by using the forest. But what occurred to me is the language was so sad. Carbon negative is a positive. That means carbon itself is a negative. Poor carbon. So innocent. We are carbon. And so it seemed to me we needed a new language of carbon. So I'll describe that today. Because I'd hate to think we have to explain a world in terms of double negatives. Because being less bad is not being good. It's not even a double negative. Less is a numerical relationship. Bad is a human value. Let us not confuse our values with value. Let us start with our values, move to principles, visions, goals, strategies, tactics, metrics, and value creation. Come to the number last. Remember, Aristotle described his teacher as a source of wisdom, Plato. The good, the bad, the right, the wrong. That is first. He called the numbers practical wisdom. But start with the wisdom. So I'd like to just talk today about these 3 things: cradle to cradle, the circular economy, and this new language of carbon. I'm very excited to be here because I've wanted to be here for a long time, and I'm really proud to be able to be in this institution. So thank you. What a gift. And we are the builders. I mean, for me, this is like homecoming. I get to spend a lot of time with a lot of people, and they seem to be more and more big businesses. So for me to be mucking about in the buildings is really my joy. And I'm going to show you a little building that we built in Davos last year. Took it to Amsterdam, brought it back, and it went up. The structure went up in 1 day. I can't wait to show it to you. But the idea that we think positive and not negative is important, and this is because of the way we see the world. So I'd like to start tonight with a poem. This is a poem about seeing things. This is Hildegard von Bingen, 1124. Glance at the sun, see the moon and the stars, gaze at the beauty of Earth's greenings. Now, think. Glance, see, gaze. When people say, oh, my backyard is getting to be a mess, weeds everywhere. It's like, to you it's a mess. To the butterflies, it's getting better daily. So how do we see? What a delight God gives to humankind with all these things. And then this little verse here. All nature is at the disposal of humankind. We are to work with it, for without it we cannot survive. This is the concept of usufruct, a strange word. It's the idea that the earth is here for human utility. Very interesting. We're to work with it. Without it we cannot survive. This is sustainability. But sustainability, I think we have to wonder. When I won that Presidential Award for Sustainable Development, it was 1996. It's a while ago, 20 years ago. Is that right? Or is it more? And I remember the press came up and said, Mr. Sustainable, you know, what does it all mean? I felt like Mr. Natural or something. You know? And I said, well, I'm not that interested in sustainability, really. I went, what? We're in the White House. I said, well, what's your relationship to your spouse? If you say sustainable, I'll say, I'm sorry, that doesn't really sound that exciting. So we're really here to do something else. We're here to be alive. And to be alive, if we look at Francis Crick, 9 years after discovering DNA with James Watson at Cambridge, looked at what he called the nature of vitalism. What does it mean to be a living thing? And he decided in order to be alive, you have to have growth. Because if you're not growing cells, you're dying. And you have to have income in order to grow. And the income comes from the sun and from the food and so on. And you have to have an open metabolism of chemicals operating for the benefit of the organisms and their reproduction. An open metabolism of chemicals. So this issue gets us down to the molecules. So if you look at Thomas Jefferson, I had the privilege in 1994 to become the dean at the University of Virginia School of Architecture. And I got to live in a house designed by Thomas Jefferson. And it was on the lawn there. It was based on a building by Ledoux, by the way, since I'm among builders, we know what this is, from 1765 in Paris that he had seen. Quite an astonishing house. Sort of cube with an exedra carved out of the front of it. Very avant-garde in a classical context, federal context. But he wrote a letter to James Madison when he was designing this place. And he said, we should let the federal government of the United States, and let's not go there, okay? Let's not go there. He said, the federal bonding authority to finance this new government should be 1 generation. The term of all borrowing should be 1 generation. He thought it should be 19 years. And this was his logic. He said, the earth belongs to the living. No man may by natural right oblige the lands he owns or occupies to debts greater than those that may be paid during his own lifetime. Because if he could, the world would belong to the dead and not to the living. The world would belong to the dead. So the idea coming out of the 1700s is the idea of equity and the right to live in a condition of fairness. In the 1800s, we see the market economy come. And it's again, the destruction of primogeniture, divine right. And all of a sudden, the market starts to rule. And then we look at pollution. Because the 1900s, I don't know what to call it except the pollution century. If we had the equity century and then the economy century, now we've got the pollution century. In the last century, we polluted. And when did we get the right to pollute? How do we make the world better because we're here? I think one of the reasons we pollute and keep doing it is because of Hiroshima. I was born in Japan. And as a baby, I heard the farmers come with their ox carts to collect our sewage, to take it to the farms. And my mother, who was from Alabama, but my father was a Japanese language officer, and in the occupation, and my mother spoke Japanese, and she would sing us poop songs in the middle of the night to put us back to sleep. So in Japanese, singing Southern American folk songs. I mean, and you're 3 years old and you're in heaven. So I always thought farms and cities are all one organism, as you'll see, and I still do. And it's in different cultures, singing songs to the babies. So what values do we have? I think the simplest value we can use in our design is how do we love all the children of all species for all time? Really, isn't that the first question? And that means that we start with our values, move to principles, visions, goals. Because if we start with value and number, we can get to benchmarking. We can be 20% less bad. We can reduce our badness, but can we create the things that come from those values if we start here and with number? So we like to start with the values. And then we ask ourselves, why am I working in commerce? Because commerce is the engine of change. It's faster. The regulators chase commerce. Right? So why would commerce make something it can't sell? So when you talk to business people and say, why are you making a product that causes liabilities instead of assets? It's a fundamental commercial question. And in the world we're talking about a world of sharing and abundance. So we're changing the entire question of commerce itself from how much can I get for how little I give, a world of scarcity and greed, to how much can we give for all that we get, a world of generosity and abundance. Sing the songs to the children. So why would we not have a commerce that is an engine of change for the better? And so that's why I'd like to think that we could imagine, although it's very difficult in the current political circumstance, that we will move from an equitable and an economic century of thinking to the ecological century. It is time now. The oceans, as we track the polymers, are filling up with plastic. It is expected by 2050 that the amount of plastic debris in the ocean by weight will be equal to that of all the fish. If our plan is to fill the oceans with plastic, we're doing great. If our plan is to fill the atmosphere with unnatural carbon, we're doing great. If that's the plan. So if that's not the plan, who's got the plan? We need a plan. So how do we plan? Well, we start with foundations. What's the foundation of the planet? Being born in Japan and seeing Hiroshima at 5, I always wondered, what is E equals MC squared? How did you blow up cities in 5 seconds? Why would you blow up a city in 5 seconds? So when I got to college, I took physics, and I said to the professor, how did the Hiroshima disappear in 5 seconds? He goes, well, you need to study the special theory of relativity and solve this formula, E equals MC squared. I can't do this. He said, yeah, you're probably right. Good luck. So he was right. I couldn't. I got really frustrated. And then I was looking, I had a fire burning because I was in New Hampshire, surrounded by forests, 1970. And I was looking at the fire and I'm going, wait a minute, that's entropy. And this is a law of physics. And it's chaos, never to return, never to reaggregate. Oh, it's a law of physics. So I went to the library looking for negative entropy. And I couldn't find it because I was in the wrong library. We didn't have Google. I was in the physics library looking for negative entropy, a law of physics. And the reason I couldn't find it, obviously, when I got back, it's the log. It's biology. Oh, negative entropy is biology. It's an aggregation of complex things that are coming together. So the sun, the minerals, the water, and it's the log that we're burning causing the entropy. It's negative entropy. So then I thought, well, that's interesting. That's biology. Oh, that means it equals MC squared. Here's the atom bomb. Have any of you solved the formula? You want to do that? It's kind of cool. It takes a while. It took me 65 years. It's a formula. So what do we need? A constant. What's the constant? C. Square it. Okay, C is bigger than I can imagine. Speed of light. Right? Square it if it's not big enough for you. So bigger than you can imagine, squared. Okay. Which means that if M is in any way a positive number, as in one hydrogen atom, then the E is C squared, which is bigger than you can imagine. Goodbye, Hiroshima. That is the atom bomb. M is the atom. E is the bomb. Right? So then I went, oh, wow. So I'm getting out of this science stuff. I'm going into the arts. And if I ever get to design a building, I'm going to design a building like a tree. So that's what I do. And this is why. Because the energy comes from the sun. The materials are here already, water, minerals. And then you put the two together with carbon as income from the atmosphere, nitrogen from the atmosphere, and we get life itself, and that's who we are. So what if we design buildings like that? Then we start to realize at this point in history, unnatural carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is a toxin, because we do lots of chemistry. So a toxin is a material in the wrong place at the wrong dose and duration. Water is highly toxic material, right? Really, seriously, wrong dose, wrong duration. If I surround you with this for 6 minutes, right? If you jump out of an airplane and hit this terminal velocity in the ocean, very, very short duration, very big dose, you're gone. So things in the wrong place, doing the wrong things are toxins. So what are we talking about with carbon these days? We talk about reducing it by 20% by 2020. Stop. Toxins, you stop. We don't tell the children in Flint, Michigan, we're going to reduce your lead contamination by 20% by 2020. Carbon in the atmosphere is like lead in a river. You know what happens if you put lead in a river? You go to jail. So, a toxin is a material in the wrong place, so why would we build with these things? And when you look at regulations, there's signals of design failure. This is the history of regulations in the United States. I'm sure President Trump is going to pay a lot of attention to this. I'm not kidding. He's trying to get it to go whoosh, like this. But what are these regulations? They're signals from society that there's something wrong and that we would like to deal with it. So a regulation is a signal of design failure. So what we do is design things that don't need to be regulated. Why would I design something that society is worried about? So we go after every chemical, every molecule. Now, the idea that all you do is reduce your badness, and all these people, all the corporate social responsibility reports look like this. And they're all going, oh, my goal is 0. Okay? And that's my goal. And I'm going to try and be less bad. And I'm going to reduce my badness by 20% by 2020. Fine. So think about your children. Sing the song to your children. What is the song of 0? Oh, my goal is nothing, and you're making it very difficult for me. What? How about poop stories? Anyway, and then you're also saying, oh, I'm going to be 20% less carbon. You're saying what you're not going to do. Can you imagine jumping into a taxi and saying, quick, I'm not going to the airport? You know, this is the best we can do. So, wait a minute. And then, this is a weird one. Net zero, I hear this from people. They go, oh, we're going to be net zero carbon on our buildings or whatever. And then you realize, wait a minute. If renewables are on top and carbon is on the bottom, which you'll see in a second, you're telling me that if I produce 100 units of carbon to produce a megawatt of power, and I put in a megawatt of renewables, that I'm net zero. That's only interesting, not even science. These are electrons, these are molecules. That means that you could be net zero by doubling the carbon release and doubling the renewables. See, the renewables are transparent to the atmosphere. So you're net zero and you just made it twice as bad. So we're not even using science to have the argument about science. People that don't understand science. Whoops, be really careful. So what we're saying is we're going 100% renewable. That's it. No more burning fossil fuels. That's where we're going. And the only way we can do that is if we imagine that what we don't want goes below the line on human values and we call it bad. And now we want to reduce it to 0. Of course, do that. Absolutely be less bad. But let's also be 100% fabulous. We're designers. This is our job. Nobody in the morning wakes up and says, I'm going to go make the world less bad. Or I'm going to get up, and do bad things today, and I'll just do fewer of them. It's not what we do. We're optimists. So if you look at this, we call it upcycle. So we take a look at our inventory of choices, and some are bad, some are good. We put them on the chart, and then we reduce the ones we don't like, and we increase the ones we do like, and that's continuous improvement. It's humble, and it's what we do. And so this, you come together with your people to talk about it, and you do inventory, assess, optimize. And the question is, we're heading for that, not this. Okay? And you make choices. Every minute, you make a choice. Do I want this, or do I want this? Go. So with Cradle to Cradle, we basically framed it as 5 categories, and they're actually in an order, which is important to see, because we go to material health first, because the planet is the planet, we are us, so we look for material health and ecological health first. Because circular economy, materialization, new business models, products and services, all that stuff that we've been bringing forward, it's not interesting unless you have qualified material. See, if you do the quantity first and you forget to do the quality, then you might be circulating toxins, right? I mean, there's carpet made from soft PVC. To some it's a toxin. And if you recirculate it all the time and get credit for being circular, oh, you just recirculated toxins. See, circular doesn't make you good. Neither does transparency. If you're a criminal and you're transparently a criminal, you're not a good person yet. The transparency doesn't accrue a goodness. Circularity won't accrue a goodness. So get it right first, then circulate it. Absolutely. Circular economy is critical. but let's circulate great stuff. And then I want to talk a little today about renewable energy, since I want to look at the carbon. And next year I'll be writing about the clean water. I might be doing it sooner. And then I want to talk about social benefit. So these are the 5 conditions of Cradle to Cradle. And they allow you, by the way, to do all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals at the same time. If you do all those things, you take the 17 Sustainable Goals and you start checking all the boxes. It's quite phenomenal. Otherwise, it hurts your head because you stare at all that. There's lots of goals there. So this is the first part of material health, is that we see use cycles. So things go back to nature or they go back to industry. These are products of consumption. These are products of service. You can't consume a television set. Okay? So these are things that go back to soil. These are things that go back to industry with our business models. So we move from the linear economy of take, make, and waste. And we used to throw things away. Well, away went away. So now we can take things, remake them, retake them. We're putting the back into resources so that we can expand the economy by reutilizing things safely. And we're designing things for reutilization. I will show you buildings designed for disassembly. It does an amazing thing. We can actually sell the building, pre-sell the building in the commodities market. It's quite astonishing. We can just say at the end of 15-year investment period, this building's worth like this. If you want to get rid of it, it's 80 euros cost. If you want to sell it as parts, it's pre-priced at 120 euros. So it's a whole different way of looking at the buildings. And the carbon issue is really important, and the cities are what obviously have taken this up with such vigor and dimension. And then we see all these kinds of city programs going on. But I'd like to look at what would happen if we could actually talk about cradle to cradle and circular cities. So I'm working on city plans at this time as well. So the linear city, it comes in, it goes out, and we get pollution. And my mom would be so unhappy because she couldn't tell me the songs about the poop. Because it goes to the sewage treatment plant, they add chlorine, and then they put it in the river and kill the river. Huh. How do you translate that in Japanese with a southern accent? I don't know. It doesn't sound good. I don't think I'd go to sleep. So poop stories matter. So if we thought about it, here we go. What if we had cities that knew how to take care of technical nutrition and and that we get rid of words like sewage treatment? Where did that come from? Let's talk about, nutrient management. Let's do fertilizer factories. You put the words to it and then you understand why would you pollute your fertilizer? Stuff like that. And we can also look at cities that take food from other places in the world and then integrate it by giving it to their local farmers. And are these things possible? Absolutely. This is Vancouver. This is struvite. This is the extraction of phosphate from the sewage, cost effectively, a 12% economic return. Quite amazing. And you give it to the farmers. And then we look at the changes that are going on in the world, and we are the land use people. You see that yellow stuff? And we change things. We cut down trees. We build stuff, cities. And we look at where these things are going, and we realize we really have to tackle it from every level. So I decided we needed a new language of carbon because I was so sad about Bhutan. So here we go. So I decided negative is not carbon's fault. See, the value of a tool is placed there by the intention of the user. So a hammer is innocent. So if you give it to a child, it becomes a toy. If you give it to a carpenter, it becomes a building. If you give it to a maniac, it becomes a weapon. The hammer is innocent. It's just a hammer. Right? The value is given by the human using it. So I decided that carbon negative belongs to humans, not carbon. Okay? So carbon negative would be a behavior. Now, if we take carbon and we burn it to the atmosphere, we could call it fugitive carbon, which implies some desperation here. Right? Fugitive carbon. And if we take plastics and they end up in the ocean, they become fugitive carbon. They escaped. Now, what we really want is durable carbon, a mountain sitting there quietly being calcium carbonate would be nice. And then we make stuff and we use it over and over again. And as long as we recycle the polymers, it's durable. The minute we let it go fugitive, waste energy plants in the oceans, not, see, fugitive. So this would be durable carbon. And then us over there, living carbon. Carbon from the atmosphere to soil accruing. like in Bhutan. Right? 3 to 1. So there's that. And then we can take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and put it in durable forms. And that's sequestration and use of carbon over generations. So the idea is fugitive carbon. Okay, let's not do that. Toxin. And it's changing the acidity of the ocean. Then we have durable carbon in a circular economy, and then we have living carbon. We have another layer, which is working carbon, which would be the burning for fuel, for energy. We'd have working carbon in plastics. It's for human use. It's that usufruct. And then we have working carbon in living carbon. That's agriculture. Okay? So this all gets very interesting. So there's that language. So that's when, when I realized I didn't want to go into science, I wanted to go in the arts. I wanted to design a building like a tree. Now, here's an ad from Toyota that has a picture of a tree. If you look closely, it's made up of human bodies, but somebody else will have to explain that part. But if you look at this picture, it's like, our aim is zero emissions, a picture of a tree. Trees emit oxygen. What do you mean zero emissions? Bird song, food, distilled water. Think about that. What an astonishing thing. We can do all these things with buildings. Self-replicate's kind of tricky, but I'm sure we'll work on that. So 20 some odd years ago, we did the first net positive energy academic building in the States. This is Oberlin College. It produces, right now it's producing 30% more electricity than it requires to operate on an annual basis. Purifies own water with a living machine. This is now YouTube's headquarters. This is 1995. And it's an ancient meadow on the roof. And so now it's a business selling native grass seed. So this was for the Gap. It's now YouTube's headquarters. And this is Ford Rouge. This was an industrial project that we didn't get any change in time or budget, so we just moved ahead, and we got to do the world's largest green roof. And because we saved Ford $35 million doing this. This is how you get to do this work. So we went there and said, we'd like to do a world's largest green roof, and they all went, you can't do a green roof. And we talked to all the roofing companies, and they don't know how to do this, you can't do this. And we said, well, we're talking to the wrong people. If you talk to the roofing people, they'll tell you you can't do it. We have to talk to the plants. We've got to communicate with the botanists to find out what would survive up here and do the job. And we found the system in East Germany. It had been developed by the East German Stasi, secret police, to camouflage MiG fighter jets during the Cold War. And it was lightweight camouflage that changed colors with the seasons. So that's what we use. Now it's the largest green roof company in America. And it weighs 7 pounds a square foot. But the main thing is when we had to sell this to the board to get approval, we didn't need 3 chemical treatment plants. We didn't need miles of pipes and 70 auto workers standing around praying it didn't rain. And we just simply went in and said, we're here to talk about your fiduciary duty as board members. That means you're here to talk about money in cars. So just so you know, this will save you $35 million on the first day over conventional water treatment. And with the Ford Taurus at a 4% margin coming out of Chicago, this is the same as an order for $900 million worth of cars. Approved. That's how, you don't come in and say you must do this. You go in and speak their language, which is money and cars. And then I had a fun moment, and I got asked by NASA to help work on the Mars space station. And I said, I can't go to the red planet until you come back to the blue one. So I worked with a really fabulous guy named Steve Zornitzer. And we said, what if we could bring the teams that did this kind of thing down to Earth? Instead, they invented the photovoltaic, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So we did a building on Earth with the rocket scientists. And it's got a lot of cradle-to-cradle materials and makes power from the parking lot, things like that. Then I got a call recently from, a couple of years ago, from the largest motorcycle company in the world. And the chairman called me and said, you got to do my next factory. And I said, I can't do it. I'm working in China. I got to do this. He said, no, you have to do this. And so that night I did a sketch and sent him this. You were asking if I draw. This is kind of goofy drawings. So I sent him this drawing. He called me back from India the next day and said, let's build it. So we did. It's a factory that grows food for the families on the roof and is powered by solar energy. We put all the structures as an exoskeleton up in the air so the families could grow their food on the roof. That's our first tomato right there. This is a project in the Netherlands, Park 2020 at Schiphol. These buildings are all designed as continuous assets. They can come apart, be sold as parts in the future. They're designed to become apartments in the future, housing. So if you don't need an office building, convert it to housing, just like that. And this whole place is renewably powered and so on. This is one of the interiors. This would become an outside courtyard if it was turned into apartments. This is for Bosch and Siemens. And this is the idea of the circular economy, looking at a building as a service in the same way we look at appliance as service. A washing machine can be a service. A building can be a service. It's a thing with a hole in the middle. It does something. Okay. Why is this such a mystery? So this is a travel agency, cradle-to-cradle polypropylene fabric. It's like it lights up like a Chinese lantern. That's the sewage treatment system. This is the headquarters for the Union of Soccer Players, football players. And then we're doing a new hub for the circular economy. It's a national project, official, with biological and technical cycles. It's 350 hectare. And the first phase is at the scale of the polder. They have farmhouses and barns. And there are solar collectors on the south side, food growing on the north side. So the whole thing is photosynthetic. This is a concept sketch for a city in China that feeds itself, powers itself. How would things like that start to be? And then I'm on my way up to Davos because of this little thing. I spent 5 years doing something really simple. I got a call from Muhammad Yunus saying, Bill, he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He said, I just won the Nobel Peace Prize for Grameen Bank, so I'm the world's banker because I'm the banker to the poor. He says, since you're the world's architect in my book, you're also the architect to the poor. So there's 1.25 billion people looking for dignified housing. How are you doing? So I just got back to work. And I spent 5 years figuring out this. It's sort of like Buckminster Fuller went to bed dreaming of domes and woke up with the right angle. And so I decided, what if I could design a building system where we use materials that are free or cheaper than free? How would we do that? Well, that would mean there are materials people pay you to take. See, because nature never charged us for the materials. So we're competing with free. This is a problem, right? Nature never sent the bill. So what if we could use materials cheaper than free? So I started designing materials out of polymers, waste polymers, and so I'm right in the middle of all that. But then I needed a system to use. So I decided we could work with a space frame for structure because I don't want to give people an architecture just a way to replace steel and wood. So they can get off the ground, they can build roofs, any shape they want, any architecture they want, that's for them. And the floor went up on this, you see it, cantilever, so it can span across this existing building. And that was put up in 4 hours. And then the walls went up. This year, this whole thing went up in a day, 1 day. And it's nanotechnology, aerogels, and polycarbonate skins. And it's this luminous thing. And what was really funny is one of the reporters who came said, this building was obviously designed by somebody born in a traditional Japanese house, looking at shoji, staring at the joinery. And that is true. That was funny. So there it is. It's just two pieces, a diagonal and a straight. And you can make any kind of building you want out of it. But here I call it the ice house just for fun. And I put the skin on the outside just for fun. Just to say to people, what is this? Well, this is a highly technical version of what we can do with it. But these are buildings that we'll show you for the refugee housing and all the different systems that we're going to build with. But I want to finish with this. As we look for our work, and we say we've got to replace carbon-emitting energy with renewables, I just want to look at this picture. This is a gift of Norway to Cameroons. It's called a solar farm, but you see, soil is not your friend here. And there's no farming going on here. There's weed control. So what do we call this? We call it a heater, I guess. Then in the United States, we have this. There's no zoning. So you can't have agriculture and solar in the same place because one's industrial zoning, the other's agricultural zoning, see. So then we thought, well, what if we put it all together? I call them the solar orchards. If we lift the solar collectors up above head height, and we're counterintuitive, we face them, we run them north-south, not east-west. See? Most solar collectors, the ones you just saw, are all east-west. These are north-south. They run this way. And they rock into the morning sun, noon, afternoon. And when that happens, you get more sun during the day. But the other thing that's beautiful is you get the shade. And all of a sudden, it's acting like an orchard. It's silviculture. And all the fungus comes back. And the grasses come back. And the deep-rooted perennials come back. This is in Inner Mongolia. The animals come back. The soil comes alive because it's shaded and it's cool. And all the fungi are happy. And for those people interested in animal husbandry, it's quite interesting, actually. You can use the posts as fence posts. And you can move different herds through it. So you can bring in the ungulates to mow it down. Those are the mowers. And you get wool, and you can get protein. And then you let it sit for a little bit. You bring in the chickens, because they go after all the patties and the poop and all the flies, and they eat all that. You know, so that's your pest control and your fertilizer spreader. You know, a chicken can spread a pile of poop 15 feet. You see what happens when you're 3 years old? Mom sings songs. Right? I'm fascinated by this. So the fertilizer spreaders, and then you can get eggs from them. Eggs are really interesting. If you take a chicken and weigh it in an egg, it's about the equivalent of a human being being able to offer a forearm's worth of protein to somebody every day. Right. So, you know, and they're just eating the stuff. Right? And then you can bring in the pigs later, and they can root around for the truffles and off to the races. So this idea that we would actually do more than one thing at a time and heal the soils and heal our energy systems and decarbonize the energy and recarbonize the soil at the same time. This is really important to us because our history will be written in the soil. China has just declared 19.4% of its farmland is toxic to food. 19.4% of its farmland. So going back out through Hildegard's vestibule, all nature is at the disposal of humankind. Yes, I guess it is. We are to work with it, and without it we cannot survive. But what a delight it is. And how beautiful are the earth's greenings. Now think, now do. Thank you.
Thank you, Master. So now we have some time for questions, and I'm very happy to open it out if you've got some questions at the ready. Does anybody want to be first to put their hand up? Otherwise, I might have to ask a question myself. Oh, there is one right here. So if you could just wait for the microphone. Do we have a microphone near you there? Oh, we're going to have to just wait a second. While we're waiting, I'll ask a question. How about that? Who's most advanced? If there's one city in the world I could look at and think they've really got a lot of these things together, and actually you could really learn from what they've made. Is anybody doing enough of this that you can say they're kind of leading the way as an organizational, complex system here, rather than one-off projects here, one-off projects there?
I don't know enough to give an answer that really would matter, but I can tell you we do a lot of work in San Francisco, and San Francisco wants to be 100% renewably powered, and we designed their garbage system for ecology. We did the waste management, meta planning, so that's pretty cool. And Portland right behind it. So those are in Seattle coming fast. So they're really into composting in Seattle. That's interesting because nobody else is. But so those are the ones on the west coast of the United States. They're not in Washington right now. The one that inspires me the most, for all the kind of reasons that I think we can celebrate, is Curitiba, Brazil. I just find Curitiba to be so beautiful because if you really look at what happened there and the stories of just how they behave, it's about loving children. And it's like when you have a problem and how do you solve it? Love the children. I mean, really, I'm not kidding. So here's a couple examples. Jaime Lerner was an astonishing mayor who was an architect. 1973, and city planner. 1973, they had the military junta, and they put him in position. The military government put him in position. Unbelievable. And the first thing he did is he said, all right, we're going to take out the shop Main Street where all the traffic is, and we're going to put in marble tile like the Copacabana in Brazil, and we're going to make it a pedestrian street. And everybody would say, oh, you can't do that. He goes, oh yeah, I know, we're going to do it in 48 hours. And they say, oh, you can't do that. He goes, you're right, we'll do it in 72 hours. It was like, it's fierce. And then they said, well, you can't do that. He goes, all right. He brought out the children with giant pads of paper and color, and he had them in the streets over the weekend, drawing and painting, blocking the trucks with their horns honking. Just blocking the traffic. The kids went out and played. And then he took the old streetcars and he made them into little daycare centers so the parents who come can go shopping and the kids are all having a good time in the street. And he built a 24-hour street. If you want to be there, you have to be open 24 hours. So this thing's alive. And then he couldn't afford subways, so he decided to build a bus system, second to none in the world. And it raised the platforms for the buses, so you don't have to bus drivers aren't making change, and the handicapped can get in and off. And then after he got that going in the factory, then they couldn't get the garbage out of the favelas. So he said, look, we can't get the garbage out of here, it's a mess. If you bring it up and put it in these cans exactly right, and we'll help the kids understand garbage that's not garbage, then you get paid. He created money. You get paid in transportation because he had bus tokens. So it's hard to be corrupt with a bus token, right? Just give somebody a bus token. So, and they can get them for free if, various things want to happen. So he paid people with bus tokens. So now you can get to work. And then he said, oh, these kids, their nutrition's not good enough. So what if we take all the floodplains of the city and turn them into farms and gardens or parks, botanical gardens, so on. And then if somebody can't afford food for their family and their children, they can get a free ride in the transportation to any one of the city gardens. It's free. And when you get there, you can work 4 hours in the gardens, and you get paid and enough food for your whole family. I mean, make sure these kids have healthy food. I mean, just one thing after another. But the one that just blew my mind, because I was there, the city, they built these little libraries because Teddy Kalick had come from Jerusalem, the mayor, and said to them, where's your library? They didn't have one. And Jerusalem just built a $90 million library. And he went, oh, yeah. But he said, we don't need a library in the middle of our city. The kids can't get there. Why don't we take the budget, divide it up, and make the libraries within 12-minute walking distance of every child? So that's what they did. So they built 48 libraries, built by local builders, they're house size. And the city put a little lighthouse in front, they're really cute. Pastel colors, a little glass room, really cool. And you go, oh yeah, library. And then the volunteer sits there and makes sure the kids are safe. And then the kids who can all get there by foot, if they drop off a cigarette butt or whatever, they get all their books they need for school that are printed on the city's recycled paper. And then they had this problem, which was the children in the favelas that were forming outside the city boundary, which was happening after 20 years, were coming in and they didn't have clothes and they didn't have shoes. And they were coming in to use the libraries. Because what Jaime had done, he said, why give libraries? And this is 1994, first time. 94, the World Wide Web had just started, okay? Had just been thought out. And he said, we're going to give all the kids access to the World Wide Web. That's where we're going to start in 94. Because they want to be a doctor, they're going to want to know the latest information. Why would they go to a mausoleum for books downtown when they can find out what's going on? So he gave all the children of Curitiba access to the World Wide Web in 1994. That's amazing. Anyway, so these other little kids were coming in, and their parents were complaining that these children were using the library and their parents didn't pay taxes. Can you imagine? So he came in with the mayor, he was the governor then, and I was in the room, and they went, and they were listening to these parents, and they were listening to these neighbors, and they were thinking about these kids, and they went, okay, so obviously, there's only one answer to this. We have to build libraries for these children. We're just going to build libraries for all these kids, so they have libraries too. And they went, what are you talking about? Our tax money, we're going to put these libraries out? He goes, of course we are. He said, listen, when you start to love the children, you have to love all the children. Because if you don't love these children will grow up. And if the city doesn't love these children, they will grow up to hate the city. And if they grow up to hate the city, they will come and destroy the city. And don't we see that playing out? You know, so this notion of getting right there and not messing with this thing, we cannot create intergenerational remote tyrannies because we'll have people revolting because it's not fair. So I'd encourage Shiva.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could ask some more questions, but I'm not going to because I'm sure some over here. Yeah.
In your presentation, you referenced a number of commercial organisations and things that they were doing in terms of investing in new buildings and so on. In terms of sort of three sectors, the commercial, the civil and the public sector or governmental sector, where do you see the catalyst for this change coming from?
Where do I see what?
The catalyst for these changes coming from? The momentum for these changes?
I think we see the desire on the part of the civil sector, and we see the desire on the part of governmental sector to do things that are propitious for the citizens and communities. But I think the powerful examples are coming from the commercial sector. And it's not easy. You really have to be able to run these numbers. And you also need people who are willing to experiment. And that's always tricky, especially with public money. So I think we're seeing it all over all the time, but it's pretty much private sector, I think, that has the most momentum in terms of the experimental front line.
Next question. Okay.
By the way, the investors, just so you get a feel for this, the buildings we're doing in Amsterdam, we get investors who are willing to take a lower return for the reduction in risk of a dead building in 15 years. See? If 15 years out this building is depreciated and it has no value, nobody wants it. You have an investment pattern and expected return. If you have an asset that will be sitting there 15 years and it's pre-priced in the commodities market, you can assign that value to it and your risk has been reduced by that amount. So the investment community is very interested in these things because it reduces risk. Little things help.
Thanks, Bill. A lot of the solutions that you were talking about rely, on the one hand, on the technical systems, the building or the product or whatever it is, but also on the behaviors of the people who use them and who deploy them. I think it's much clearer at the moment how technical measures can be scaled to very large audiences. Could you speak a bit about the cultures and the habits that are required to make these things work and how you see those scaling and being deployed at scale as well?
Yeah. Well, the thing I've always found, we were talking about this earlier, productivity and things like that are immensely valuable, but they're also kind of subjective often, and they're hard to pin down, a lot of the behavioral things, where the benefit comes from, how people are. And then when you're experimenting, you've got all kinds of things to figure out and watch what's working, what's not working. But I think the things that are generally working is we've found that that people work differently now. Do you know that WeWork is about to be the largest landlord in New York City? Right? People are just working differently now. I was in a big real estate office in New York where the strategic planners for 4 of the Fortune 100 companies were expecting reductions in work in a number of people, 80%, because of artificial intelligence. So there's stuff coming at us that we haven't even begun to think about in terms of how that's going to affect the way we work and occupy, buildings of that kind. But I think we will have other things we do, and these are tools. So the question is, how do we use these tools? But AI is really seriously something to consider of what's coming now. And I think for the perception and the use of space, I do know that companies like Google have made full commitment, basically, to people coming to be together during the day. And that that the original thinking that you could put everybody working in their pajamas from home, is not where the innovation all happens, when you're lonely like that. So I think we'll see the performance benefits. Many of them are very tangible. We have one project that the company won't let anybody know the numbers. And it was fascinating. I always thought, why wouldn't you share all these numbers? And they said, there's two reasons. One is they increased 16% performance. Now, if the average person is earning $100,000 and the building costs $20,000 per person, CapEx, and they're 16% more productive economically, according to the data, then they're earning $16,000 a year in a building that costs $20,000 to build for them. So they're paying back the building in about 13 months. The CapEx, this isn't saving a little energy. This is paying the building, the entire cost of the building, in less than 2 years. The reason they didn't want to release all the numbers is two. One is they have 33,000 employees. And so why should 750 get the benefit of being here when what about everybody else? So it's like, wait a minute, that's like going to cause all kinds of chaos. That's one thing. And the other is they're not in the business of real estate. So it's like, why are you spending all this time worrying about buildings when you're supposed to be doing this other thing? It's funny. Strange. I thought that was a weird behavior. But, but I think people like these buildings more, and they're nicer, and they're fresher, and, we're trying our best. And the birds chirp. That's nice.
Can we go to the question over here? It's good if you want to say your name and where you're from. I'm sure I said that before, but please feel free.
So my name is Saijo. I work for Arup up the road. And I wanted to ask more of a specific question than it's been asked so far. I was interested in your choice of polymer as a building material, and in built environment, CLT, cross-laminated timber, so bits of timber with glue in between. It's talked about a lot, and I wondered if you could comment on whether that's just a less bad material.
What, cross-laminated timber?
Yeah, or whether it's good, and why you've gone with polymer instead.
Oh, we use everything in its context. So right now we're designing a building in timber. I love timber. My grandfather was a lumberjack. So I have a lot of big tree karma I'm working off. And in the Pacific Northwest. So I grew up in the summers. I lived in Hong Kong, but in the summers we were in the Puget Sound in the big trees. And so I love wood. And I think wood is a great building material. And so that all makes total sense to me. Sorry, that's fine. Yeah, as long as the glues are cradle to cradle certified, you're good. See? No, really, down to the molecule, you can do it. And that's good. And I think on the polymers, remember, you've got to see them. See, we as designers, I don't know about you, but I love being able to imagine everything from ephemeral material to the most durable material. So we see short cycle products, tissue paper, shoji, to durable, long-term cycle products like aqueducts and bridges and infrastructure. So everything's sort of in there. And on the polymer front, we like polymers when they're, the way I look at them, they're durable carbon, right? And all of a sudden you start to imagine it's durable. That gets very interesting. It's a durable material if it's recycled, right? And then we can look at the chemistries and make sure people are safe and healthy and so on. And so the one that I'm really cranking around now is this one of using the trash, because we've done an assessment of all these garbage dumps around the world and what the polymers are and the inks, and it's just scary. So how do we reuse those materials in a dignified building condition? And I think we've figured it out. So we're very excited about that. But this is not an easy thing. I think the key thing is just remember, there's durable things and ephemeral things. There's living systems that need to be celebrated and kept safe. And then there are reuse systems that need to be perpetuated. And this idea of fugitive material is just, forget it. So I think as long as the plastics are treated with dignity and they do something dignified, they're just a material. They're not guilty.
Question over here.
While we're doing that, one thing that we're going to see a lot in the plastics is people are saying they want bio-based plastics and biodegradable plastics, which is a really nice idea. Thing is that we will be using oil for a long time. And the way I look at oil is think of it as soil without the S. And if we bring it back up, we can put the S back in it. So I think one of the most elegant uses of oil right now are some of these new biopolymers that I've been playing with and working with, which are going to be used to heal soil. Because we can actually use them as a soil mulch to get the moisture back, get the worms back, get the fungi back, start chelating or chelating the heavy metals and things like that as a healing act for soil. So it's not it's not just this or that. It's not. There's fabulous plastics. It's not the answer to everything. We know that from the graduate.
Yeah, I think this carries on that theme. It's Robert Cohen, I'm an energy consultant. Do you think that carbon capture and storage has a role in the circular economy?
Yeah, I think that it does, and I think, why wouldn't it be a good idea to reduce the unnatural carbon in the atmosphere at this point in history? Absolutely. I think what we'll see though is that carbon capture and storage will become real in scale when it's not an imposed sanction, but it's a business. I think that's the key to this. If we can get carbon capture, if we can make plastics out of atmospheric carbon and then use it as a durable plastic, right, which is really interesting, or we can use it for like PHA or something like that, where we can actually put it back in soil. It's a compostable plastic. Then we're actually getting everything back into soil. I think recarbonizing the soil, just don't ever forget that. Just do that over and over again, So if we can get the carbon down and put it in the soil, it'll accrue more carbon, So, but I think we will see. I call them the horizontal chimneys too. I think the idea that we lay the chimneys down, we capitulate, no more putting it in the atmosphere, and then we take it off, and use it for, producing photosynthetically derived oils and things that we can use for polymers. But again, keep it terrestrial. Yeah.
Can we take it over here? Next question.
Hello, Jane Thornback from Construction Products Association, but I did do an ecology degree in California in the 70s. You're very able to move between understanding of systems, between agricultural systems, living systems, building systems, atmospheric systems. And I don't know if this question makes sense. I just wondered if the explosion of information today and maybe the need for people to specialize makes them less able to look at the world in a systems way across all of these different things, or whether you think it enhances them to think in that way.
That's a great question. Well, that reminds me. Let me remember your question, but before I get there, let me tell a story. It's my favorite story. Early 70s, Gregory Bateson, Margaret Mead's husband, wrote a book called Mind and Nature. And he was studying the idea of cybernetics that Norbert Wiener brought up at MIT. And this is while we're still punching holes in cardboard called IBM computer. Right? So this is long before the PC. This is early days. And so he's in the book, and he's telling his daughter a story, and he's in the future, and he's sitting in front of a computer, and he's saying, "So tell me, computer, when do you think computers will begin to think like humans?" And there's a long pause, and the computer goes, that reminds me of a story. So that reminds me of a story. When I became dean at University of Virginia, I'm sitting in front of the faculty and the students, and I had 650 students and 60 faculty, so it's like this. And I'm the dean. And I'm not coming from academia. I'm private practice in New York. And I'd done some teaching at Yale and Harvard and so on, but here I am the dean all of a sudden. out of nowhere, tenured, full professor, the dean. And so one of the professors goes, here's my question. You're obviously an interdisciplinarian. You could never be tenured if you came up through academia, because you wouldn't be peer reviewable. Interesting. And that's why I was excited about Nature publishing my article, because they said, we're not going to peer review this. It's a new language, you know. And like all my scientist friends are freaking out, like, we're all trying to get into Nature, and like you just write this thing and they publish it. You know, it was like, and I remember they said, so are you expecting us all to learn everything? These students here, they don't know where to put the toilet on the plan, and they can't draw, and you're going to talk about zoology or something, you know? So what do you expect these students to do? And I said, well, that's really a great question, because the question is now not that we have to become interdisciplinarians per se. I think we have to become multidisciplinarians. I think we work in bigger teams now. We always work in teams. And you have to know that you need a zoologist. That's what you have to know. That you're going to need all this. You don't have to know it. See, I'm like a total amateur all the time. I'm just like a child. I just play. I just think, is this pretty? Is this beautiful? Does it make me happy? Can I sing a song to my kids about it? You know, all right, I'm okay. And I don't know, they let me, I get licensed to practice. So that's why we call this practice, right? Well, the practice of architecture. It's like when everybody says, well, that's not very professional. I know, that's why we call it a practice. So, you know, it's what we do, we practice. So I think that's what we can do now. We can see the whole systems, we can see them better, and we can see the connections. And we can get access to so much information so fast. And watching the AI, has anybody worked with AI yet directly? Whew. If you have that kind of power of computing, it'll blow your mind. I went to meet with an AI company because I want to see what this all means to us. And I went to a company, and I got there because I'm good friends with some people who could get me in the door. And I get there, and these business people are sitting there. We're in San Francisco, and they're the most dramatic AI company, according to the head of Google and Elon Musk, which is a good reference. And so I go in, and they go, okay, we're talking to you only because you've got a good reference, so what do you want to know? And I said, well, how's business? And they go, well, we don't really do business anymore. I said, you're out of business? Yeah, well, we don't have any more customers. Really? Yeah, customers are a real pain. The AI can run itself. Here it comes. If you think about the history of this, the manufacturing, the term manufacturing, if you look at the etymology, it means execute by hand. Right? So the first manufacturing is weaving, making bricks, laying bricks, manufacturing. Right. And then knotting, weaving, hands. And then we got Manchester and its looms, and we call it what? Manufacturing. Really? We probably should have called it machine factoring. Right? And that moves us to the next scale. Then we moved to robot factoring. Now we do 3D. It's quite amazing. I do giant factories, and I just saw a factory in South Carolina, 60,000 square feet, textiles. 2 people. Robots. 2 people. Amazing. And then now we're worried about the machine learning. So now we've got machines teaching machines how to do stuff. And what are they teaching them? What are they talking about? What's the plan here? So I think it's time to come back to the hand and understand what we do, what we make, and articulate very carefully what it is we want from this. And I think it means going back to that basic thing. Is what is the fabric of life itself?
Question in front here. There's a microphone. Where was the microphone? I forgot where it was. Yeah, do it. One here.
Hi, I'm Dan Epstein. I think everybody in this room completely buys into this kind of worldview that you've been talking about, which is, it's incredibly elegant. We'll walk out and we've just, as the City of London has just invested in the Thames Tideway, which will take all of our sewage, pump it out into Beckton, turn that into desalinated water, burn it and dispose of it, so billions. As a country, we're investing in nuclear as the kind of way forward in a system that has been proven to fail in various countries. So I just wonder, how do you, we'll go back out in the world and we'll kind of, we want to kind of take this idea forward. How do you suggest this kind of transformation is going to take place, or how do we work to really create a new conventional wisdom or new business as usual, if you like?
This is what when I started, I said how hard, this is hard. And it just got harder, right? Just got a little bit harder, yeah. I think all we can do is, as Edward Abbey, who was an eccentric American environmentalist in Nevada, he said, well, somebody asked him, well, what is the job of the environmentalists? And he said, our job is to outlive the bastards. and what he was talking about is like, we should be having more fun than they are. We should be showing cooler stuff than they are. We should just get on with this thing. And I think that's all we can do right now. And I don't mean party up in some silly way, but I think it's time to, really make the beauty of this known and make it part of the culture. Because what is happening is ugly. And what we're dealing with here is what is beautiful at this point in history. And I think that actually carries a lot of potency in it over time. In the meantime, we're going to have to wait this thing out as it goes. We just have to keep finding the alternatives. So when the nuclear plants, the Indian Point nuclear plant near New York is about to get shut down, right? So, this stuff happens. And I think I remember I went to Chattanooga in 1992 before the Earth Summit, an American industrial foundry town. And the air quality in Chattanooga had been declared worst in America. They beat Los Angeles in 1969. They had a civic heart attack. I mean, you had it here in 1955, I think, right? Right? Wasn't it dark here? You had to have headlights on at noon.
Yeah.
You took 2 shirts to work, and you go, what? So China's going through that now. But anyway, one of the foundry owners sat at the back of the room, and he goes, Mr. McDonough, all this sustainability stuff is all very interesting, but I only have one question. How long is this going to take? And it was like, it's going to take forever. That's the point. So we better get started. So I think you just do what you can do. But I think we need these fundamental things. I think we need to say everything is benefit to something else. So, just do your work. That's all we can do. Just do your best. The nuclear thing, that's going to have to bring itself down.
Well,
I used to be able to say, why don't we get out and vote, but that doesn't seem to do it. So.
That's a bit gloomy there. What if you were in charge here? Okay,
we're optimists.
For the first 100 days,
Yeah.
what should happen? What actually, because you did come up with some pretty alarming and rightly so data on just how things are getting pretty messed up. So we need to move fairly fast here if we were able to take control.
Yeah.
What would you do? What would you actually?
I would get if you think about it, and I know this is going to sound probably perverse, and I haven't thought about it, so I'm going to get in trouble. Just up here, I'm going to get confused. And I think it'll sound very strange. I think one of the reasons we have Donald Trump as a president is there's this desire, I don't know what it comes from per se, but there's this desire to get practical and get stuff done and be in business and whatever. And if he's successful in business, then he's going to be successful in politics. Now, that's yet to be seen, and I'm very concerned about that because there's a whole different way of being, obviously. And I can't even watch because it sounds like chalkboard getting scratched with fingernails to me. So I can't even watch it. So I'm not very much use. But I think the idea now is to get our commercial people, the great commercial people and get them moving, because the power of the resource, of the economic resource, driving our direction is immensely effective, even to people who don't understand the underlying, the ethos that runs this thinking. If you can show them the money, you can get them to move. So I think we have to show how this is so much more practical. It's like the Rouge. We can do 3 chemical treatment plants, lots of pipes, or we can do a forest and a meadow and save a lot of money and get on with life, and the world got better. You have to show it, you have to do it, and then other people can copy it. It's like Leibniz said. He said, if it is possible, therefore it exists. So our job is to make it exist so it's possible, right, for other people. And I remember reading a study in the New York Times, 1984, about people's personality and changes and what caused them. And the major cause of personality shift was economic stress. You notice that too. And then but I went looking for what didn't change, and I asked the researchers, and I think we barely had a fax machine then. So I called Stanford, and I got their head researcher, and I said, what did you find did not change out of 187 personality characteristics? And she said, well, we weren't looking for that. We were looking for what did change and why. I said, well, what didn't change? So we took all the analysis and we formed it up and we looked at it. And we turned out there were 2 characteristics of human personality that didn't change. Friendliness and willingness to experiment with new things. My guess is this room is full of friendly people willing to experiment with new things. That's very interesting. And I think that can drive a culture. Because if we look in history, we see that over and over again. So those are the things that don't change. So be friendly, be willing to experiment with new things. And when you see a glass of water, don't be a pessimist and say it's half empty. Don't be an optimist and say it's half full. Just say it's full of water and air. And it's not big enough to share. So go for it.
Well, I think that's a pretty motivational point to bring things to a close. So, Bill, I would like to thank you very much. I'm not sure how many people we could get on a Friday evening, on a wet Friday evening, very cold Friday evening. We only had a little bit of notice, as you know. It was actually posted about a week ago. It's fantastic how many of you turned out, and I think that only goes to show certainly what the reputation Bill has, and he certainly has delivered on that. So I'd like to have a big round of applause for Bill McDonald. In terms of friendliness and innovative thoughts, I think the bar stays open for a bit longer, so please do go upstairs if you want to stay around and have a drink. I think Bill's going to be around for a little bit longer. So, yeah.